So today's video is on Miss Laci Peterson. This one got covered a lot. Watching Nancy Grace. Big fan of Nancy Grace. So we're going to do this one, but we're going to do this one a little bit different. We're going to do this like a little crime story and makeup session. So let's get into it. So Miss Laci Denise Peterson. She was born May the 4th, 1975. And she was an American woman killed while 8 months pregnant with her first child. Later on, we found out that the child is indeed a boy. But Laci's husband, Scott Lee Peterson, and his birthday is October 24th, 1972, was convicted of first-degree murder for her death and the second-degree murder for the death of their unborn son. Originally sentenced to death, Scott's sentence was overturned in 2020, and in 2021, he was re-sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And Scott has maintained all this time that he's innocent. Okay. So let's get a little bit of backstory. Miss Laci Denise Peterson. She was born to Sharon Anderson and Dennis Robert Rocha, who had met. The two met in high school. No, her parents met in high school, and they owned a dairy farm in California. Laci's older brother, Brent Rocha, was born in 1971. Laci worked on the farm from a young age, and she also enjoyed gardening with her mother. Sharon and Dennis divorced when Laci and her brother were young, and Sharon and the children moved to Modesto. This is where this story circulates, is around Modesto, California. Though the children visited the dairy farm on weekends, Sharon eventually married Ron Gransky, who helped raise Laci and Brent from the time Laci was 2 years old. Laci was a cheerleader in junior high and high school. After graduating from Thomas Downey High School, she attended California Polytechnic State University, majoring in ornamental horticulture. So now we get into Mr. Scott Peterson and his backstory. Scott was born in San Diego, California. To Lee Arthur Peterson, who owned a crate packing company, and Jackie Helen Latham, who owned a boutique called LaJoya, called the Put On. And this is Wet n Wild foundation. And I just got some on my eyebrow. It'll be fine. I'll take care of it. So, she owned a clothing company called the Put On. Lee and Jackie had 6 children from previous relationships. Scott was their only child together. As a child, Scott shared a bedroom with his half-brother John in the family's 2-bedroom apartment in La Jolla. He began playing golf at an early age and by age 14, he could beat his father at the game. For a time, Scott had dreams of becoming a professional golfer, and he was teammates with future pro Phil Mickelson at the University of San Diego High School. By the end of the high school, he was one of the top junior golfers in San Diego. In 1990, Scott enrolled at Arizona State University, where Mickelson had also enrolled on a partial golf scholarship. Scott's father, Lee, later testified that Scott was discouraged by the considerable competition that Mickelson and an unnamed future pro presented, according to Chip Couch, the father of another young golfer, Chris Couch. Scott was taken off the golf team after Chip discovered that Scott had taken his son out drinking while Chris was visiting Arizona State for a recruiting trip. Tripp complained at the Arizona State golf coach, who subsequently kicked Scott off the team. Scott transferred to Cuesta College and then to California Polytechnic State University. That's where he met Laci. Eventually planning to major in international business, Scott ultimately graduated with a degree in agricultural business, and professors who taught Scott described him as a model student. His agribusiness professor, Jim Atham, commented and said, "I wouldn't mind having a class full of Scott Petersons." So, we're going to get into their relationship now. Okay, well, the two were at California Polytechnic. Scott worked at Pacific Cafe, a restaurant in Murray Bay, and Laci would occasionally visit the restaurant to see a friend who also worked there. In mid-1994, Laci sent Scott her phone number. She also told her mother that she had met the man that she would marry. And Scott later called Laci and they began dating. As the relationship grew more serious, Scott put aside his dreams of being a professional golfer in order to focus on a business career. The couple dated for 2 years and then eventually moved in together in 1997 after Laci graduated. They moved to Sycamore Mineral Springs Resort. While Scott finished his senior year, Laci took a job in nearby Prunedale. Prosecutors later stated that around this time, Scott engaged in his first extramarital affair. They did not reveal details of the relationship. Scott graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in agricultural business in June 1998, and the Petersons opened a sports bar in San Lucas, Obispo called the shack. The Petersons decided to put the shack up for sale when they moved to Laci's hometown of Modesto, California, to start a family, and they completed the sale in April of 2001. Now, Laci's family, no, in October of 2000, I was about 15. The Petersons purchased a 3-bedroom, 2-bath bungalow house for $177,000. Covina Avenue, an upscale neighborhood near East Baluma Park. Laci took a part-time job as a substitute teacher. And Scott got a job with Trade Corp USA, a newly founded subsidiary of a European fertilizer company, for which he entered a salary of $5,000 a month before taxes. I don't know if I'm doing this right. Could be right. So, Laci's family, including her mother and younger sister, related that she devoted much of her energy towards being the perfect housewife. Enjoyed cooking, entertaining, watching Martha Stewart. And in 2002, Laci discovered that she was pregnant. Her due date was February the 10th, 2003. The couple had planned to name their son Connor, and in November of 2002, Scott was introduced to a friend, this Amber Fry, a Fresno massage therapist, and they began a romantic relationship while his wife is pregnant with her first child. So, let's get into her disappearance. Alright. On December 23rd, 2002, at 5:45 p.m., Laci and Scott went to Salon, a workplace of Laci's sister, Amy Rocha, where Amy cut Scott's hair as she did each month. Scott offered to pick up a fruit basket that Amy had ordered because he would be playing golf the next day at the course nearby the retailer, nearby the person that sold the fruit basket. Okay. Prosecutors say Scott also told other people he would play golf on the day of Christmas Eve. Laci's mother, Sharon, spoke with Laci on the phone around 8:30 that evening. The last three people known to have spoken to Laci before she disappeared were Amy, her sister, Sharon, her mother, and Scott, her husband. Scott later told police that he last saw his wife about 9:30 a.m. on December 24th when he left to go fishing at Berkeley Marina. He said Laci was watching a Martha Stewart show about meringue and preparing to mop the floor, bake the cookies, and walk the family dog to a nearby park. A neighbor of the Petersons, Miss Karen Service, said that she found the Petersons' dog, a golden retriever named Mackenzie, alone outside the home and returned him to the Petersons' backyard at around 10:30 a.m. She later testified that she had found the dog at 10:18. Another neighbor, Mike Chaveda, said that he saw Mackenzie about 10:45 a.m. and she played catch with his own dog. With his own dog. And the Modesto Bee also reported an unnamed female neighbor found the dog with a muddy leash wandering the neighborhood. That neighbor put the dog in the Petersons' yard, not observing that anything was out of place. And at 2:15 p.m., Scott left a message for Laci saying, "Hey, beautiful, it's 2:15. I'm leaving Berkeley." He was leaving the marina. That's not coming out. Maybe I put a spray right here. Hold on, let's spray a brush. Okay. Say that he was leaving Berkeley Marina. Scott said that he returned home that afternoon, finding Laci's car in the driveway and the house empty. He also stated that he found Mackenzie in their backyard and that he relayed this to Laci's mother, Sharon, though Sharon later denied this in her book. Scott showered and washed his clothes. A neighbor of Scott's later said that Scott knocked on his door, asking if he'd seen Laci. The neighbor and his wife both testified overhearing Scott saying that he had been golfing that day, and he tried to call Laci. A relative of Laci's would also later testify that when friends and family began gathering at the Peterson home that night, Scott said that he had gone to play golf. He didn't say nothing about going fishing. Okay. Scott said, okay. Okay. Scott called his mother-in-law Sharon to ask if Laci was there with her, and Sharon subsequently said that What? That call was when she learned that Laci was missing. Scott and Laci's stepfather both reported Laci missing. The police received the report of her disappearance shortly before 6 p.m. At the time of her disappearance, Laci was 7.5 months pregnant, with a due date February 10th, 2003. The couple had also planned to name their baby boy Connor, and it got nationwide media interest. I learned about it from Miss Nancy Grace. My mother was a loyal fan, still is. The investigation. So, Modesto police. I should a little thicker on that one. Okay. So, Modesto police detectives Alan and Mr. John. The lead investigators in the case responded to the missing person call. When they arrived at the Peterson home, Laci's keys, wallet, and sunglasses were found in a purse in the closet. Detective John told ABC News in 2017, I suspected Scott when I first met him. Didn't mean he didn't. Didn't mean he did it. But I was a little thrown off by his calm, cool demeanor and his lack of questioning. It's a lack of questioning. He wasn't. Will you call me back? Can I have one of your cards? It was not one of those guys. What are you guys doing now? Detective John further describes Scott's behavior as a strange combination of polite and arrogant. Disaffectedly distant and impatiently irritable. Of course, I know what he did. I have my suspicions. When all the evidence adds up. And the evidence has added up. He just didn't seem like a man who was crushed or even greatly disturbed by his wife's disappearance or possible death. So, after Scott told the police that he had gone to fish for sturgeon at Berkeley Marina, this is Wet n Wild. About 90 miles from the couple's Modesto home, detectives immediately launched a search. The police later said that they suspected foul play almost immediately. They did not treat this as suspicious within the first did not treat the case as suspicious within the first few hours after the missing persons report was filed. During this period, Scott's in-laws defended him and portrayed him and Laci as the ideal couple, and the public perception of Scott reflected this. As police continued to investigate, they grew more suspicious of Scott. All right. And on January 17th, 2003, I forgot to do silver right there. It became known that Scott had engaged in two extramarital affairs prior to the affair with a woman named Emma Fry. Fry informed police of their relationship on December 30th, 2002, shortly after discovering he was a person of interest in Laci's disappearance. She told detectives. She told the detectives that she had met Scott on November the 20th. Okay. And that he had initially told her that he was single. She also informed the police that Scott had told her on December the 9th, 2 weeks before Laci's disappearance, he was a widower and it would be his first Christmas without his wife. Police considered whether this was an indication that Scott had already decided to kill Laci. Fry agreed to phone him while police recorded her subsequent phone conversations with Scott in the hopes of getting him to confess. Okay. So, on January the 15th, 2003, police told Laci's immediate family that Scott had been having an affair and showed Sharon and Ron a photo of Scott with Amber. So, Sharon indicated at this point that she believed Scott had killed Laci. And on January 24th, 2003, oh, mascara me. Sharon and Ron and Laci's brother Brent told reporters that they were withdrawing their support from Scott, though Scott had not officially been named as a suspect. Hours later, Amber Fry held a press conference in which she explained her role in the investigation, and Ron Gransky, Laci's stepfather, would later testify that they did this upon learning of his affair with Miss Amber Fry. In particular, upon seeing photos of the two together. So, a month after Laci's disappearance, her brother Brent Roja stated in a press conference that Scott had admitted to him during a January 16, 2003 phone conversation that he had been having an affair with a woman from Fresno at the time, though Brent added that Scott was no longer communicating with the Rocha family. The search. I just dropped something. The Modesto police and firefighters carried out an extensive search along Dry Creek the day after Laci's disappearance. The search continued to include helicopters equipped with searchlights, police mounted on horseback and bicycles, canine units, and water rescue units on rafts. A total of 30 officers were involved in the search, as well as Laci's loved ones, volunteers who posted flyers to raise awareness of her disappearance. At the press conference, Detective Al said that the police did not believe that Laci decided to leave without contacting her family, commenting it's completely out of character for her. The initial search and later vigil were organized by immediate family and friends. In the first 2 days, up to 900 people were involved in looking for Laci before community officials or police directly participated in the search prior to sufficient media coverage. A $25,000 reward was offered and later increased to $250,000 and finally to $500,000 for any information leading to Laci's safe return. Posters and yellow and blue ribbons and flyers were circulated, and the original basic version of the LaciPeterson.com website was launched by the husband of one of her friends. Friends and family and volunteers set up a command center nearby at the Red Line Hotel to record developments and circulate information. Over 1,500 volunteers signed up to distribute information and to help search for her. Okay. And on April 13th, 2003, a couple walking their dog found a decomposing but well-preserved body of a late-term male fetus in a marshy area of the San Francisco Bay. In Richards Point, Isabel Regional Shoreline Park. In October 24th, ABC News report stated his umbilical cord was still attached. And the San Francisco Chronicle reported that it appeared torn rather than cut or clamped, as is the normal practice following birth. However, ABC News later reported on May 30th that according to the autopsy, the placenta and umbilical cord were not found with the body. One day later, a passerby found a body of a recently pregnant woman washed up on the eastern rocky shoreline of the bay, 1 mile away from where the baby's body was found. The corpse was decomposed to the point of almost being unrecognizable as a human body. The woman had been decapitated and her limbs were missing, including most of her legs. On April 18, 2003, the results of a DNA test verified that the bodies were that of Laci and her unborn son, Connor. The autopsies on both bodies were performed by forensic pathologist Dr. Brian Peterson, no relation to Scott. Connor's skin was not decomposed at all, though the right side of his body was mutilated. The right side of his body? Okay. Although a judge sealed the autopsy results, an anonymous Associated Press source revealed that 1.5 loops of neon tape was found around the fetus's neck, and a significant cut was on the fetus's body. The exact date and cause of Laci's death was never determined. Her cervix was intact. She had suffered 2 cracked ribs, but Peterson could not determine if this occurred. If this occurred before or after death. Laci's upper torso had then been emptied of internal organs, except for her uterus, which protected the fetus, explaining the lower level of decomposition it experienced. Peterson concluded that the fetus had died in utero and determined that he had been expelled from Laci's decaying body. Though when cross-examined in court, he concluded that he did not determine whether he had been born alive when this occurred. Peterson also found meconium in the infant's bowels, which is the first stool at the birth. Post-discovery investigative efforts. The discoveries of the bodies created a greater sense of urgency. The detectives who had put a tracker on Scott's car, knowing that he was in San Diego at the time. Um, they feared that he would escape across the border to Mexico. And one of the detectives commented in 2017, "I just thought we've got to find Scott right now. He told me he was there, and that's where the bodies came up. I mean, I believe it was premeditated. He planned it. San Diego was pretty darn close to the Mexico border. Scott knew that area pretty well. That's where his parents lived, and that's where he lived. So it wasn't like he was going to have to get on MapQuest and map out his way to Mexico. He knew he was close enough to it. By the way, this is LA Colors. Scott knew that. Okay. So, okay. They feared he was going to go to Tijuana, Mexico. And the FBI and Modesto Police Department performed forensic searches of the Peterson home. The FBI also conducted mitochondrial DNA testing on a hair from pliers found in Scott's fishing boat that linked them with the hairs recovered from Laci's hairbrush. The authorities also searched Scott's pickup truck, toolbox, warehouse, and boat. They found a homemade anchor in the boat that Scott purchased 2 weeks earlier. Scott told a detective he made the anchor in his boat using a 90-pound bag of concrete, and he used the rest of the bag to repair his driveway. Detective Henry Dodge Henday testified that he found a cement-like substance on the wooden bed of a boat trailer when he searched Scott's warehouse on December 27th. Henday pointed out to what he said were 5 circular areas of the trailer that had less powder than other areas on the trailer. He also found a dustpan surrounded by white powder and a sledgehammer. Prosecutors believe that Scott made 5 anchors and used 4 of them to sink Laci's body in the San Francisco Bay. After Scott was arrested, police conducted further searches in the bay in an attempt to locate the anchors, but nothing was found. Okay. Let's get into Scott's arrest and arraignment. Before his arraignment, okay. Scott was arrested April the 18th, 2003. Near La Jolla Golf Course, where he was supposed to be. And all this went down, but we knew he went and where he was supposed to be. where he said he was meeting his father and his brother for a game of golf. His naturally dark brown hair had been dyed blonde, and his Mercedes was overstuffed with items and including nearly $15,000 in cash. He was making a getaway. 12 Viagra pills, survival gear, camping equipment, several changes of clothes, 4 cell phones, and 2 driver's licenses, his and his brother's. Scott's father, Laci Peterson, explained that Scott had used his brother's license the day before to get a San Diego resident discount at a golf course, and that Scott had been living out of his car because of the media attention. Police and prosecutors, however, saw these items as an indication that Scott was planning to flee to Mexico. On April 21st, 2003, Scott was arraigned in Stanchius. If I got that wrong, please forgive me. County Superior Court by Judge Nancy Ashley. He was charged with 2 felony counts of murder with premeditation and special circumstances. He pleaded not guilty, and the judge moved his trial to San Mateo County because of the concern so many people know about the trial. And they had their minds made up about Scott's guilt. Before his arraignment, Peterson had been represented by Kirk McAllister, a veteran criminal defense attorney from Modesto, Chief Deputy Public Defender Kent Faulkner, who was also assigned to the case. Peterson later indicated that he could not afford a private attorney named Mark Garagos, who had done high-profile criminal defense work. Scott's trial began June the 1st, 2004, and was officially followed closely by news media. News media, lead prosecutor Rick Distasto while Garagos led Scott's defense. Prosecution witness Fry hired her own attorney, Gloria Allred, to represent her. On June 23rd, 2003, one of the jurors was dismissed by the judge after they spent 2 hours in the chambers questioning each of the jurors. Prior to Laci's June 21st hearing, an aforementioned juror, the juror that had been recorded on video speaking to Laci's brother-in-law, Brent Rocha, Laci, had initially stated that this exchange was not a warranted removal. He did not give a reason for the juror's later dismissal, although the transcript of DeLucci's session with him indicated that the juror had admitted that his girlfriend and others had spoken to him about the news reports of his encounter with Rocha. And DeLucci furthermore warned the remaining jurors not to read, watch, or listen to media coverage of the trial. And this is Wet and Wild, Set and Powder. So, we get into the trial, we get into the evidence. The evidence. Lacking direct evidence to link Scott to the crime, prosecutors chiefly relied on circumstantial evidence, pointing into particular Scott's behavior before and after Laci's disappearance. The various witnesses and the prosecution suggested that Scott had several motives for killing Laci, and that he was tired of his marriage. He felt the pressure from a pregnancy, and that he wanted to continue his affair with Amber Fry. And that was his undermounting financial pressure. Prosecutors claim that Scott made cement anchors to lay down his wife's body in the San Francisco Bay. Sharon Rachel testified that she went to Berkeley Marina to search for Laci. She saw Scott there, but she said Scott did not acknowledge her, calling out to him, and he later angled away from her attempts to hug him. And he failed to attend the candlelight vigil. Two other relatives of Laci said Scott has shown little emotion during Laci's disappearance. And 3 witnesses testified that Scott had told them that he had been golfing, not fishing, after Laci's disappearance. The prosecution called on various witnesses to establish that Scott changed his appearance, purchased a vehicle using his mother's name, added 2 pornographic television channels to his cable service days after his wife's disappearance. A realtor testified that in a January 22nd, 2003 phone call, Scott expressed interest in selling the house he had shared with Laci. The car salesman testified that Scott had traded in Laci's Land Rover for a Dodge pickup truck. Fry testified that her affair with Scott Fry testified that her affair with Scott and the jury heard the secretly recorded phone calls between the pair, and one recorded after Laci disappeared. Scott falsely said that he was in Paris. And as to Peterson's financial condition, an auditor testified that the prosecution that the couple had been living beyond their means and accumulated $23,000 in credit card debt. During cross-examination, the auditor also stated that Scott had paid all of his bills on time and that he had $20,000 in credit available on other credit cards. So, there was 2 hair follicles found on Scott's boat. They belonged to Scott, though he said he could not determine whether they belonged to Laci. FBI trace evidence expert said that she matched one of the hairs to the hair found on Laci's hairbrush through mitochondrial DNA test. The prosecution further suggested that the hair must have come from Laci's dead body because she had not been seen on the boat while she was alive. And it just keeps going down. The defense was suggested that the fetal remains were of a full-term infant and theorized that someone kidnapped Laci, held her until she gave birth, and then dumped both of their bodies in the bay. Prosecution's medical experts contended that the baby was not full term, that he died at the same time as his mother. As a matter of fact, Charles March, a fertility specialist, was expected to be a crucial witness to the defense. March said that the Petersons' unborn baby could not have died any earlier than December 29, 2002. Under cross-examination, March said that he had based his findings based on a report by one of Laci's friends, who said that Laci had told her that on June 9, 2002, an at-home pregnancy test that presented a positive reading. But the prosecution criticized March for having relied on a friend's report. After prosecutors criticized March for a typo in his report, he remarked, "Cut me some slack." In response to the testimony, Stan Goldman, a criminal law professor at Loyola Law School in Los Angeles, said that these were moments today that reminded me of Chernobyl. Alright, the verdict. One juror was removed and replaced during deliberations due to misconduct after she conducted independent research on the case. The jury foreman, also an attorney, then requested his own removal, most likely because his fellow jurors did not want to replace him as foreman. Garagos told reporters that the foreman had mentioned threats he received when he requested to be removed from the jury. The foreman was replaced with an alternate. One juror, okay, on November 12, 2004, the jury convicted Scott of 2 counts of murder. First degree murder with special circumstances for killing Laci, and second degree murder for killing the fetus she carried. The penalty phase of the trial began on November 30th and concluded December 13th, when the jury rendered a sentence of death. On March 16th, Judge Laci followed the jury verdict, saying that sentencing Scott to death by lethal injection, and ordering him to pay $10,000 toward the cost of Laci's funeral, calling the murder of Laci cruel, uncaring, heartless, and callous. Okay. On October 21st, 2005, a judge ruled that the proceeds from the $250,000 life insurance policy Scott took out on Laci would go to Laci's mother, which was reaffirmed by the 5th District Court of Appeal on October 21st, 2005. Scott arrived at San Quentin State Prison in the early morning hours of Wednesday, March 17, 2005, where he was reported not to have slept the night before, being too jazzed to sleep. He joined more than 700 other inmates in California's sole death row facility during the appeals process. He did a direct appeal on January 5th, 2012. The next day, Scott's attorney, Cliff Gardner, filed a 423-page brief contesting the sentence. But the state attorney general's office filed a response brief on January 26, 2015. The defense filed a response to the state's brief in July 2015, claiming that a certified dog that detected Laci's scent at Berkeley Marina had failed 2/3 of the tests with similar conditions. All right. On August 24th, 2020, in a 7-0 decision, the Supreme Court of California upheld Scott's conviction but overturned his death sentence. The court found that Scott's trial judge had improperly dismissed jurors who opposed capital punishment without asking them whether they could put their views aside. Justice Legendra Kruger explained that per Supreme Court rulings since 1968, jurors may have not been excused merely for opposition to the death penalty, but only for views rendering them unable to fairly consider imposing the penalty in accordance with their oath. Prosecutors initially stated that they would retry the penalty phase, but subsequently reversed the decision in June 2021. On September 22nd, 2021, California Superior Court Judge Anne Christine Massiel ruled that Scott would be resentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The following month, she scheduled a hearing on the matter for December the 8th. On December the 8th, the judge resentenced Scott to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the first-degree murder of Laci and subsequent sentence of 15 years to life for the second-degree murder of Connor. In October of 2022, Scott was moved off San Quentin's death row and transferred to Mule Creek State Prison in California. So what do y'all think? Let me know in the comments below. And always, please like, subscribe, and comment. I'll make it to 1,000 subscribers. Y'all have a good night. Bye.